Let's talk all about cast iron cooking. Hey guys, welcome back to At the Table. Sydney here, and today we are talking all about cast iron skillet cooking. So we actually have a nice big cast iron skillet. You can see it's already hot. I've tried to go ahead and start heating it up a little bit, and we're gonna talk a little bit about how to use that. The one that I purchased is a pre-seasoned cast iron, so if you do not have one and you're looking for one, this is the one I found at Walmart. But it says seasoned on the package. So that way it's one less step that I have to do. If you have a cast iron skillet that maybe you have inherited over time, or maybe you found it at a yard sale or something, and it has any rust in it, there is a way to still salvage it. So we'll talk a little bit about seasoning this and salvaging and all of that stuff here in just a minute. But I want to start on our recipe so it gets working, and then we'll talk in between. So what we're actually making is a cheesy enchilada skillet recipe. So it will all be made right here in our cast iron skillet. However, we're gonna pair it with a homemade enchilada sauce, and we're gonna start on that first, and that will be made in our pot. So what we need for that is we are gonna use a little bit of garlic and oil. So we'll start with our garlic, using fresh garlic here. And I've talked to you guys about this before, but using the palm of that hand to help break up your garlic and get, that one was a pretty large clove, so that's almost like 2 cloves. And so I'm just gonna use these little tiny ones as our other 2. And we'll chop that all up. This enchilada sauce recipe seems pretty easy. Doesn't have too much in it involved, so it seems pretty simple. But if you want to, if you don't have time or you're strapped for time, you can absolutely do just buy your own the jarred enchilada sauce. Or you could double this batch and make a big old batch of it, and then that way you've got some extra left over for next time. So I'm just gonna cut off those ends. Don't look too great. And then I'll just go ahead and chop this up. You could also use the minced in the jar if you prefer that. You won't get quite as fresh of flavor, but if you don't have a lot of time and you still want to use that fresh garlic, that's a great way to do it. So cast iron cooking is definitely a great way to cook. You can utilize your cast iron, whether it's a pot or a pan like what we have here, in so many different ways. They're great for going straight from your stovetop to your oven. One thing you do have to remember is that it can get very hot. So what we actually have here is a little cover that goes on our handle so that we can grab it more easily as it begins to heat up. So that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and turn our burner on and get some oil in there. We just are gonna use about ½ a teaspoon of oil. So I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit and throw in our garlic. And we're just gonna let that saute up for just a minute to start to get the oil fragrant. And then we just have a few other things that we're gonna add that are all pretty simple. While that is heating, I'm gonna go ahead and chop up our chipotle chilies in adobo sauce. So These are those really hot chilies. I mentioned before that I like to just throw these in the freezer because they're so easy and convenient to use. So you would just let those thaw out a little bit and then throw them into your recipe, whether it's you're chopping them first or whatever it might be. I do like to wear a glove just because these can get very hot and I don't want any of that, the residual oil left on my, my fingertips. Okay. So that is starting to cook up. We're gonna go ahead and add in our ingredients. So what we have is 1.5 cups of 3 cups of canned tomato sauce. I just got the tomato sauce with no salt added. So we're just gonna dump those. I did 2 cans. It says 3 cups. I just averaged, that's probably about 2 cans, maybe a little less, but I don't want to have leftover canned sauce left. So that will be perfectly fine. We also have chicken broth. So we're going to do 1.5 cups of chicken broth. Ooh, that I'm squirting everywhere. And then we have our chipotle chilies. And a couple of seasonings. So the last couple things are chili powder, cumin, and then just a little bit of salt and pepper. So this will be a little bit spicy, but not to the point where you can't handle it. Depending on your spice level. I feel like it's not overly spicy. So we'll just do about a teaspoon of chili powder and then a teaspoon of cumin. And then we're just gonna do a little bit of salt and pepper, and we're gonna let this come to a boil, and then once it reaches that boil, we'll reduce it to a simmer and let it cook for about 7 to 10 minutes. So while this is coming to a boil, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll see you guys back in just 1 second.
Every year, 7 million 911 calls are made in North Carolina.
911, what's your emergency?
Will you answer the call? Every second counts. You can be that lifeline. People in crisis look to us for assistance. We provide guidance and support until physical help can arrive at the scene. Join us and make a difference in our community. Be the calm in the chaos. Be the voice in the dark. It's the hardest career you'll ever love. Will you answer the call? Discover more at it.nc.gov/911careers.
All right, guys, so our enchilada sauce over here has come to a boil. I've reduced it to low. We're gonna let it simmer for about 7 to 10 minutes. So the next thing I did wanna show you guys is if you have a cast iron skillet that is not seasoned. So if you purchased one that was not a pre-seasoned cast iron skillet, or you've had a hand-me-down, or maybe it's just time to season it again, you would start with, take your pan, you can heat it up just a little bit, and then blot it. There's going to tell you 2 different ways. You can blot it and with a little bit of oil. So I'm going to take my paper towel here, put a little bit of oil that I'm going to let soak into the towel just a bit. And then you're just going to kind of blot it around. You don't want an excess layer of seasoning or grease. Just because while it's good for it to be well seasoned, if you have too much, you might start to see some black flakes that start to happen. That's actually not your cast iron skillet flaking off. That is where it's been, it's got too much seasoning on it. So it's been overly seasoned. So you don't want that to happen. You just want a nice thin layer of oil. And I like this method because it's really simple. Then you would remove it from the heat, let it cool, dry it off if you need to, and then store it. If it still needs more seasoning, you could repeat that process again. Another option is to actually put a thin layer of oil in your pan and then bake it at about 350 for an hour in your oven. So that method does take a little bit more time, but then you'll just wipe any of the excess out, let it cool, and store it. When you're storing your cast iron skillet, or any cast iron that you were using, you want to make sure that it is fully dry and you're storing it in a cool place where there won't be any moisture that can get to it. If you're nervous that some moisture could come into contact with it, just place a paper towel in the bottom, and that way it'll help to kind of capture any of that moisture that might be, whether it's in the air or maybe you're placing it in an area that just could possibly get some moisture. Doing a paper towel method in there will definitely help. The big thing we want to avoid with cast iron is that rust. So keeping that in mind and trying to make sure that you do everything you can to avoid that rust happening. As I said before, if rust does happen, you can actually use like a steel wool scrubber, and you can scrub the rust and then rinse it all out until you can get that layer of rust off. We don't tend to want to use something like that that's really abrasive on a cast iron skillet regularly. Even metal utensils we don't want to use because they can be a little bit too abrasive, and they can start to remove that seasoned layer, which is the main reason why we don't want to use that. But you can just use, a soft vegetable brush if you have to use something to scrub it. Really, the best method is to rinse it in a sink with just water. You can use a mild soap if you have to, but no bleach or anything like that. And you would just dry it really, wipe it out really well and dry it really well. So what we're gonna do next is we're making our enchiladas, so our enchilada skillet. So while our salsa is working, we're gonna work on the next step. So what I'm doing is I went ahead and did my garlic. We just had 2 cloves of garlic. And then the next thing we need is just half of an onion. So you guys saw I chopped it in half, and then I went through and made my little slits long ways. And now I'm going back through and making cuts in the opposite direction. This way my onion is already diced up without me really having to spend a lot of time doing it. Then you can run your knife back through if you just want it to be chopped up a little bit further. I like to do it just in case I've missed any spots. All right, so I went ahead and turned this on. It's on low. I'm gonna add just a teaspoon of oil, so not much oil going in there. But you saw that I did just add some oil as well. So I'm gonna spread that around, and then we're gonna add our onions and garlic. And it is nice and hot, which is exactly what we want. Smells good. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is to add in our spices. So we've got a little bit of cumin and some salt. So I'm gonna do 1 teaspoon of cumin, and then a sprinkle of salt. And we're gonna just let those cook up for about 5 minutes. So while those are cooking, we'll take a quick break. We'll see you guys back in just a minute. Hey guys, Today we're at the Sampson County Extension talking all about Ag Day. So Eileen, tell us a little bit about what is Ag Day? What are we going to have?
Ag Day is a great event that we have every other year, and we'll be having it this year on October 30th at the Agri Expo Center in downtown Clinton. We hope that you'll come join us for Ag Day. We have lots of fun-filled activities for you, things like cow milking, learning how to paint a barn quilt, a drone demonstration, and pony rides, all kinds of fun activities and things to see. You'll be able to stand right beside a full-size combine or tractor. Think about all the things you see as you travel through Sampson County and agriculture that's growing around you and being harvested. Those are some of the things that you'll see.
I can't wait. We also are going to have live music, food trucks. We've got a comedian and a magician. So it will definitely be fun for the whole family. Free admission.
That's right. Admission is free.
And what are our
Some
hours?
of the food is going to be free. We're going to have free ice cream. But like Sydney said, lots of food trucks, lots of variety of food for you to choose from.
So check us out October 30th. We can't wait to see you guys there. All right, our onion mixture is done. It looks so good. It's nice and caramelized. You can see a little bit of the brown bits that are happening over here. So it is done. You want about 5 minutes of that, and then it's good. So what we're gonna do is transfer this to our bowl, and we're just gonna sit our skillet to the side. And it is hot. So we'll just move that out of the way, and then we're gonna add some yummy stuff to our little onion mixture here. So we're gonna add our some sour cream, and we're gonna mix that with like a 1/4 cup of water. So I've already got that, and then I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of sour cream, which will end up being about a 1/2 cup total. This is light sour cream. I prefer to go the light route, or you could use Greek yogurt, and you want a little bit of extra for your topping. So do your 1/4 cup and then reserve the rest for topping your skillet. So we'll mix all that together. And then we also want 2 cups of our enchilada mixture. See if that will stay. So I do have a little ladle here. Has definitely been enough time for our sauce. So let's do this. And we'll just get about 2 cups. And this actually makes a total of 4 cups. So you will have leftover enchilada sauce for another recipe, or if you like to use drizzle a little extra enchilada sauce on top, whatever it might be. You've got lots of options, but you've got extra sauce to work with there. You could also freeze this sauce. So if you made a lot and you're worried that that you won't use it in time, you could let it cool and then throw it into a freezer bag or a freezer safe container and stick it in your freezer, and it will do just fine there. Okay, so we're just gonna combine all of that. Next thing that we're gonna add is our chicken and beans. So we have about 4 cups of chicken. The recipe called for a rotisserie chicken. I went shopping when they didn't have any yet. It was earlier in the morning and I was coming to work, so there weren't any rotisserie chickens available. So what I did was I just used chicken breast and did a little bit of chicken breast to make 4 cups. Already looks so yummy. And then I actually cooked my chicken breast in the Instant Pot because it just cooks a little bit more quickly. And then I just shredded it with a fork, so really easy. Up next, we have our black beans. So we're using 1 can of black beans. I'm sure any other type of bean would be great in this. You could do pintos if you'd like. I think those would kind of fit along the lines with this recipe. But I'm sure other beans would be great as well. So whatever you have on hand will work. And I drained those black beans and I rinsed them really well, just because they were not the no salt added. So remember that step that you can drain and rinse, and that'll help to remove some of that sodium. So up next we have some corn tortillas, and we're just gonna use 4 of those corn tortillas. It says to tear them into quarters. I'm just gonna cut them because I've got my cutting board here and it's just as easy. So I'm just gonna cut that into 4s. And I did just buy the white corn. You can get whatever kind you like. The white corn was actually what was on sale when I was at the store. So, you know, I just went for whatever was a little bit more affordable. And your corn tortillas do count as a whole grain because corn is considered that whole grain. Remember from when we had Megan on, we talked about that for National Whole Grain Month. So you're getting some whole grains in here as well as your vegetables and chicken, so all yummy, good stuff. And we're just gonna kind of fold that all together until it is kind of heated through. Or sorry, folded through, mixed all together. Folded nicely. I do love that this actually doesn't require a ton of, even though I have all these little bitty bowls. At home, you probably wouldn't have quite as many bowls and things as what I have, but I like that it has only a few things that you need in terms of making this, so you're not really dirtying a whole bunch of dishes when you're at home. So what we're gonna do next is put this into our pan. And as I said, the great thing about a cast iron is you can go from the stovetop to the oven. And that is exactly what we're gonna do. So we're just gonna lay that in there nicely. Of course, my cast iron is still warm. It hasn't been very long since we just used it. But I'm just gonna kind of lay that all out so that it's nice and even. And then we're gonna add a little bit of, we're gonna cook it just for a few minutes until it's kind of heated through. So that'll help to heat through the chicken, heat through the beans just a little bit so that there's nothing that is still cool whenever you're cooking it. So I'm gonna let that heat through for about 3 minutes. We'll take a quick break. We'll see you guys when we get back to finish this off.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
All right, so you can actually see our enchilada skillet is already starting to bubble, so it is looking good. It is heated through. It's exactly what we want. We've got these nice little bubbles forming around. I did throw in some red bell pepper, so if you see these little bits of bell pepper, I had like a quarter of a bell pepper left in the fridge, and I was like, dang, I should have added that when I did the onion, but I wanted to use it up. So you can, of course, adjust any recipe. As I always say, recipes aren't rules. So that is a great way to utilize leftover vegetables. So what I'm doing next is we've got the reduced fat 4-cheese Mexican style blend cheese, and I'm just using about half of this bag. It says 3 ounces, and I don't feel like measuring. So we're just gonna cheese it up until it looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna pass it along to go into the oven. So I'm gonna pass it to my little off-camera assistant over here, who's gonna throw it into the oven at 500 degrees for 5 minutes. So we're just gonna put it in there until it's bubbling, and our oven is already preheated, so it's ready to go. This is a cheese blend I used. You could use anything, a Monterey Jack, a cheddar, or mozzarella. I like the blend because I just like a little variety there. So while that is bubbling and working on cooking up, we are gonna do our toppings. So what we have is some cilantro as well as a jalapeno. I've already rinsed our jalapeno off. I like to use a glove anytime I'm working with a jalapeno because, as y'all know, as I mentioned with the adobo peppers, I don't want the residue oils on my skin. Jalapenos can be very spicy. They can also be pretty mild. I've been surprised when I've had some that aren't quite as hot. So we are gonna go ahead and seed this. If you like things really spicy, you could just keep the seeds in there and start to chop it up like you would see all arranged pretty. But although I'm not a complete wimp when it comes to spice, I'm a little bit of a wimp. So I want it to be just a hint of spice and not kind of overburden my palate there. So I'm just cutting these seeds out. And I don't know if you noticed, our onions never really stuck to the bottom of our pan. So if you have issues with, that's a complaint we hear a lot about cast iron skillet cooking, is that things can stick to the pan. If that happens, there are some tips for you to avoid that. So one is preheating your pan before you actually cook in it. So go ahead, stick it on your stovetop and start to get it warm, and that will help to reduce anything sticking. So we did do that prior to cooking. Also, you could try to avoid turning whatever. So especially meats, people tend to just overturn and move their meats around, and that can actually cause more sticking than is needed. So definitely trying to get it nice and golden brown on the bottom and only flipping it that one time can help to reduce that sticking. Okay, so those are chopped up. We're also gonna do a little bit of cilantro, which I absolutely love. As we're getting into winter, into fall with these cooler nights, if you have any fresh herbs at home, you might want to begin thinking of bringing them inside. So finding a nice little spot for those in your home. That way you can actually have herbs all year long and can use them in a variety of dishes. I do that with my basil every year and it always does great. So you can do a little garden indoors if you've got the space for that. You just want to make sure it has plenty of light, and then you're of course watering it as you would if it were outdoors. All right, that's pretty good. You could do as much cilantro as you like. We're just gonna do enough to sprinkle over the top. And I can smell our mixture, our skillet enchilada mix coming together really nicely already in the oven. So I'm excited to get that out and check it. But we are just gonna be topping it with the jalapenos, the cilantro, and then we have a little bit of sour cream that we'll sprinkle on top. You can take it directly from the oven once it's done. You wanna let it cool a little bit and then sprinkle your stuff on it, and then you can stick it right on your table to be beautiful on your table for people to kind of eat family style that way. So we'll show you it when it's all done from the oven. I hope that you learned a lot about cast iron cooking. Don't be afraid to cook with a cast iron skillet or pot or whatever it might be. They're very easy to use. If you have questions on caring for that, give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to help you out. You'll have a great day.